Hello, this is the LBN podcast, and I am Eun Jee, Chief Director of Low Brass Network, and I'm met today with Emmy Rozanski, who is a trombonist, both a teacher and a performer.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, would you like to first describe yourself?
Sure. So, yes, I am a trombonist, teacher, and performer. I, like many people, started playing trombone in fifth grade when I was 10, and I loved it right from the beginning. And I joined my local youth orchestra and kept playing. And then I decided to major in trombone in college. I got to take from the principal trombonist of the Milwaukee Symphony, Megumi Konda, in my undergrad, which was amazing. And then, so after my undergrad, I went to LA for a little bit because I thought I was really interested in playing for movie soundtracks. I thought that would be so cool. And I took some lessons with people out there. And so then I ended up going for my master's because one of the lessons that I took was with Ralph Sauer. He was former principal trombonist of the LA Philharmonic, and he was teaching at Arizona State at the time. And I really liked my lesson with him. So then I ended up going to Arizona State for my master's. And then 1 year into that, we got a new trombone professor, Doug Yo, who was former bass trombonist of the Boston Symphony. And that turned out really well for me. And then I ended up staying there for my doctorate too at Arizona State. And then after that, I moved back to the Midwest where I'm from. And I am now working in Milwaukee and Chicago. um, I am I have a low brass private studio, about 15 students, um, mostly high school, but some younger, and then some adult students. And then for 6 years, I worked with an Alsa Stemma inspired program through Ravinia, and I really loved doing that and learning more about the Alsa Stemma philosophy. But this year I have a different job. I'm working for the um let's see. I'm working for the it's called a connections program for the Wisconsin Conservatory of Music. And through that I'm teaching fourth through eighth grade general music, which has been like a new challenge for me because I hadn't really taught general music before. And I learned the ukulele for that. So that's kind of what I'm up to now. And I perform a lot. I am currently doing a musical, Bye Birdie. I am in a German style brass band, which is really fun. We do quite a bit of performances, a couple orchestras, some big band music, all sorts of things.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly amazing. I think you touched into something about philosophy when you were like talking about your career. So, how was that like philosophy in low brass?
Um, like my teaching philosophy, kind of, or
Yeah, definite that teaching philosophy.
okay. Um, yeah, well, that's something that I've thought a lot about. I think I was mentioning the Elsa Stemma philosophy. And Elsa Stemma is a program that was started in Venezuela as a music for social change program. Gustavo Dudamel is someone who came out of that program, and then it's spread all over the world with Elsa Stemma inspired programs. So the idea is to give students something productive to do with their time, like teach them music so they don't get into other things that aren't as healthy for them. And it's about being a great musician, but it's also about learning to be a great person. And so I feel like that is something that I care a lot about with all of my students, that I want to show them that I care about them, and like as a person, not just as a musician. Of course, like I want to help them get as good as they can be on their instrument. Um, but just building a strong relationship is really important to me, and knowing how I can help them, trying to find out how I can help them as a whole person and give them an example, um, of someone who is there for them in their life.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful because I mean, I think it's under acknowledged. Like, most people emphasize the relationship between like the player and their instrument, right? Like how well they can play. But also, like, there's definitely a factor in what music comes out based on the relationship between the player and the professor itself. Um,
I think so. I think that's super important. You know, that a student feels comfortable with their teacher, with their professor, to express themselves and be able to get the most out of their lessons and their instrument and their emotions.
yeah, I mean, I know I was playing and I was kind of close with my high school band teacher, and he said to play louder, and I ended up playing maybe a little bit too much louder.
Okay.
Yeah, but I also want to know about what your experience was in the difference of teaching style between like just teaching low brass versus teaching general music, which you said was much more different.
Yeah. It's like when I just teach low brass, I really know what I'm doing, I guess. And a lot of times it's private lessons. So when I'm teaching low brass, so that's very different. I did do some group lessons with the Ravinia Sistema inspired program. Um, but having that smaller group also makes it different. Um, so with general music, I have bigger classes, like 15-ish students. And um if you're not just like teaching them an instrument, it's kind of a different mindset, like teaching them just general things about music, like dynamics or tempo and things like that. So we did like listening to music and figuring out different tempos, talking about different kinds of music. But then I started teaching them ukulele, and that was a lot of fun. I just kind of stayed a few chords ahead of the students, and I had some classes that just amazed me. They would make up their own songs, and they're like 4th or 5th graders, and with lyrics, and they would it would be like really powerful. So that was really cool. Yeah, I guess it's kind of different in the way that I'm not teaching something that I know, like, really well, that I've studied for 20 years, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it's really powerful, especially with how you said the students ended up creating their own little songs. It's like
Mhm.
music is definitely an art. I think you
Yeah,
can definitely like sort of feel like the feelings that some musicians pour into their music.
that's true. I mean, in some ways, the feeling is more important the technical ability. I mean, we're trying to get enough technical ability that we can portray these feelings
Yeah,
and give
exactly.
them to someone else.
I think once you get past the initial barrier of actually knowing what's on the page, like dynamics, notes, rhythms, all that stuff, then you can really start to go and deep dive, sort of bend the
Definitely.
rules, right?
Yeah, make it your own.
Hmm. Anyways, I just really wanted to talk about your project called Musical Imaginings, which was a unique class. So, in what way is it sort of unique, and how did you come up with this project?
Yeah, well, we were almost kind of talking about it already, but so I've always been really passionate about stories and visual art as well as music. And also like the storytelling in music, right? The emotion and the storytelling through music is what makes it really fun for me. So I kind of came up with this idea to incorporate all of these things. And sometimes I do just like musical imaginings classes, but sometimes I just incorporate like parts of it into like my general music class or even private lessons sometimes. So one of the things that I really like to do is read a kid's book like that has pictures, and then every page I'll have the students do some improvising. And this can just be like totally free improvising, or you can give them some parameters like we're going to use like notes in a certain scale if they know that. But basically, just whatever it can be like the mood of what was on the page, or it could be more literal. Like if someone was running, then we're going to like make sounds on our instrument that make us think of running. So that's one of the things. So it's a lot of creative improvisation in the musical imaginings. Um, Another thing I'll do with it is like have students imagine that they're taking a walk in their neighborhood, or it can be in the woods, or it can be in another place. Like you could really let your imagination go wild and just have them like think for a little bit about what sounds they might hear, and then start to try to make some of those sounds on their instrument and improvise in that way, and you get kind of a neat soundscape going on. And another thing is with emotions. I've had a lot of success. Students really seem to like doing this. So we'll make a list of emotions, like they can tell shout out different emotions. I'll write them all down, and then either we can pick one and we all improvise something that sounds like that emotion to us, or like one student will pick one but not tell everyone else, and the rest of us has to have to guess like which emotion it is. So I think that so much of the time in lessons, people focus on all the technical things, especially with students who aren't really technically advanced. But I think it's just as important to focus on expression and musical ideas. And I think this is a way to get people used to doing that, like right from the start.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main reasons why I will always be a like trombonist at heart. It's because I deeply abhor vowel. Like the slide, you can make so much more out of it. Like the running, you can like slowly bring the slide up. You can't exactly do that with valves or with buttons.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I really love that sort of idea of teaching people to like improvise because that's normally not what's taught in regular ensembles, right? It's basically teaching people to blend in and not stick out too much. Meanwhile, this class is like go ham, like whatever you feel, play.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of fun. And I think it's really worthwhile too to explore that area of music.
Yeah, I mean, I, I really wish I could have that level of expertise in which I can just like make sound effects as I live my life. Just like holding the trombone every time I walk behind a person, just start playing.
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, I would. Anyways, um, I wanted to also sort of talk about the ensemble that you have going on. I heard it's called the Firefly Festival. I mean, sorry, not the festival, the ensemble.
Yeah, but we're the Firefly Brass Duo,
Gotcha.
and it's me and a French horn player friend of mine, and we have known of each other since way back when we were in youth orchestra, but we weren't really friends at that time. But we reconnected when she started a meetup group for musicians in my area about 5 years ago or so, and we reconnected through that. And so then we both are from a town called Wauwatosa, which means firefly in Native American. So when we were starting our duo, we decided to call it the Firefly Brass Duo. And we started our first performance was in the summer of 2020, and that was like at the height of the COVID pandemic. So like no performances were happening, but we did a performance in my front yard for people just to like sit out in the yard or drive by in their car. And that was really nice because no no performances were happening. And then this past summer we performed at the International Women's Brass Conference and the National Women's Music Festival. And we the really cool thing about our group, I think, is that most of our music is original. So we commissioned a piece that was written for us by a local composer and French horn player. And that's called Unruly Energies. And the composer is Michelle McQuaid Dewhurst. And that's a really cool piece. And then I wrote a couple pieces, and Allison, my the other person in the group, she wrote a piece. And then I have a friend who has a tuba euphonium duo that he's written music for, and he arranged some of those duos for us. And actually, I just commissioned a high school senior student of mine who does a lot of composing to write us a piece. So I think that's a fun part of what we do, that we have a lot of original music because there isn't very much music for horn and trombone duets. So we kind of had to do that out of necessity. And we try to do like very accessible, fun concerts. You know, we'll explain about our instruments, we'll kind of do some funny skit things. Like a one of our pieces is called Gone Fishing, and I like came in with a fishing pole with a like a kind of a toy French horn dangling from a fishing pole. So we try to like work in story elements and kind of fun skits and make the concerts very accessible for kids and for anybody really. So that's a project that I am really looking forward to doing more on, and writing more music, having more performances.
Yeah, I think it's you brought like you found a person and you guys just like played together and I feel like hopefully that's our main goal that we want to achieve, just bring people together, especially through our low brass festival that we'll have later on. Maybe we will get more unique combinations like that where it's like French horn and euphonium or
Yeah.
we already have a low brass ensemble actually, and it's a bunch of trombones. It's also a bunch of euphoniums. And
Oh, nice. How many
yeah,
people are in the ensemble?
well, it's relatively changing around a lot, but we actually, I think the low brass ensemble was just invited to the international, I think, n I'm not sure.
Okay.
One sec. It's at Arizona State University. I forgot what it was called.
Oh, that's where I went to school.
Oh, really?
Hmm. That's where I did my master's and doctorate at
Oh,
Arizona State.
yeah. No, let me just quickly check.
Is it like the tuba euphonium conference or
Oh,
something?
yeah, it was that one, the Tuba and Euphonium International Conference or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah, and we were so honored to sort of both like be invited to speak about LBN there and also have our ensemble be invited there. And I think we're like the first high school ensemble that was invited there.
That's really exciting. Are you playing in it?
Um, Unfortunately, I think I'm gonna be a bit too busy for that.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so it was called the International Euphonium and Tuba Conference. I was invited
Excellent.
to sort of view what the ensemble is gonna play though.
Okay. Like
Yeah,
to hear what they're playing?
uh-huh, exactly. And
Have-
I really hope we can make a lot more like connections there because in the end that's what it is. It's you're building connections, you're playing together, you're making music together. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. Like I haven't been to that particular conference, but I've been to the International Trombone Festival and the International Women's Brass Festival, and both of those have been like great places for making connections. So I think this should be too.
Speaking of which, that is a excellent transition to my shameless plug of the Low Brass Festival. So yeah, I've been speaking about it for a while in the podcast now, but the Low Brass Festival, we ended up making it free to enter. And basically, we're having like around 80 or more artists from around the world, all in a certain, like, you'll be able to get in there and basically view ensembles performing. You'll be able to view master classes, especially from your class, which
Hmm.
is I'm very excited for. And judges will be judging, and there'll be promo codes, rewards, stuff like that, just all to get more opportunities to low brass players and to create connections. So, would you like
So
to?
cool.
Yeah, I know. Would you like to talk about your sort of involvement in this festival?
Yeah. Well, Lester contacted me through my website, and it was kind of out of the blue to ask me to be a judge for the festival. And so then I kind of like looked up what is this low brass network, and I thought this is so wonderful that these people have started this organization and are providing instruction and opportunities for anybody who wants to learn low brass. So yeah, so I was really excited to be part of it and really happy that Lester reached out to me.
Yeah, I think the main thing, we did initially get a fair share of skepticism, but once people saw sort of our vision and our ideals, they were like 100% on board, right? And that's
Right.
sort of how I was 100% on board as well. I think the low brass community does not deserve as like enough recognition that it currently gets. And I think like also we found initially we were trying to sort of spread via location and like get interest through location, like places around where we were initially founded. But we actually ended up realizing that it's much more easier to spread through like passion. right? People who
Mm-hmm.
have the same sort of like passion for low brass as us. And it ended up sort of boosting like us so much, just how you were just like invited out of the blue, but you sort of saw what we were doing and you were 100% on board, right?
Right.
And that's sort of how we ended up going from Fremont all the way to Tennessee. Um, because we had another director like 100% on board from there. And yeah, we've been growing ever since.
Yeah, I think it's really impressive that you were able to take this idea and bring it to fruition. Because there's, people have so many ideas, but to actually follow through and do all the steps necessary is another thing. And I'm sure that this is a huge undertaking. I don't even know how many things you've had to do to organize this festival and are still doing. So I just want to say that I'm really
So yeah,
impressed with
would you
that.
like to talk to us about um your lesson that you would be providing in the festival?
Yeah, about growth mindset.
Hmm.
So this is something that I got interested in through my work teaching for Ravinia. We had a professional development day, and one of the presentations was on growth mindset. And immediately I was really interested in it. So it's the idea that you can get better at anything. So, like, the opposite of that is a fixed mindset where someone thinks, well, this is as smart as I am, I can't get smarter, something like that. um and I remember one of the examples was the person who had written a book on growth mindset. She was saying in her school they had to sit according to their IQ. So that was like a very fixed mindset idea. And for me, it was really powerful because I had always struggled with performing well in auditions or sometimes like solo performance type recitals too. Like I would get really nervous. And sometimes I would think, well, like that I couldn't get better at that, like at at performing like when I was under a lot of pressure to the best of my ability. And I would think, well, maybe I just shouldn't be pursuing this. If I have this, if I'm not able to do that, I'll never be able to make it. And those kind of thoughts um, are really fixed mindset kind of thoughts. And so then when I started reading about this, I thought it could help a lot of people, because there is so much talk in music about like talent. People say it to me all the time. They'll be like, "Oh, you're so talented," when they see a performance, and I'm kind of like, "Well, I practiced a lot. I worked really hard." It wasn't like talent was maybe a small part of it. And this growth mindset idea is that like you can get better at anything. It's not just like you're talented or you're not talented, which I think sometimes goes around in the music field, that you either have it or you don't have it. So I thought it would be great to spread this to teachers and performers, teachers to like instill, speaking of philosophy, that's another part of my teaching philosophy, to try to bring this growth mindset to my students, um, and to just musicians in general.
I think like the biggest indicator of that sort of like fixed mindset thinking is also like when you would stop, um, especially with like range wise, like you're like, oh,
Hmm.
high, high F is like the best I'm gonna get. Can't go any higher than that. But I really love the trombone because you can in fact go higher than that. And like if you have the audacity to, you could go all the way up to
That's true.
yeah,
Yeah,
no. And like not only that, but also like various aspects of like musical like ideal or ideas such as like being able to play treble clef instead of bass clef or being able to play like super soft in like a very hard to play phrase. I think all of that is like dependent on how much you try. And sometimes I like listen to some trombone solos or duos or ensembles. And initially my sort of idea is like, oh, they must be super talented, like just like you said, like,
mm-hmm.
oh, and then, you know, it's like sometimes I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can do that too. And then I actually try it. I'm like, yeah, it's gonna take like 5 years.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of hard work with to master so many things on the trombone.
Yeah. Um, so I'm really looking forward to sort of that lesson, and hopefully you'll be able to inspire some musical minds both through this podcast and maybe through your involvement with the LBN Festival.
I certainly hope so.
hmm do you have anything else you would like to add?
Um, I don't think so. Just that like I said before, I think it's amazing what you're doing with LBN and this festival, and I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, definitely. I think we also have a competition going on who can like we not only to like limit it to professional players, right? We have a competition going on and basically whoever like whatever ensemble that ends up winning the competition, they'll be able to perform at the festival as well. So like any person just interested in low brass themselves, it doesn't have to be like some widely renowned musician. Um, I on it like I think that's really powerful in that sort of like highlights what the low brass community, not just like famous low brass people, right?
Yeah, so it's a competition that anyone can enter.
Definitely. Um,
Okay.
there are solos, ensembles. You can do like maybe some composition competition, and yeah, there are also like various prizes. We could have never done this festival without all of our sponsors.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, how did you go about getting sponsors?
So initially, Low Brass Network, we were working together with DF Music, and they're
Okay.
basically we did a promo with them, and they're basically what got us going because we ended up having like connections, right, to the low brass like community, and we ended up coming up with this idea, asking artists if they wanted to join, and ended up asking sponsors as well if they wanted to join, and like we we specifically chose sponsors that highlighted like had the same sort of ideals as us, wanting
Mm-hmm.
to maybe either give much more opportunities, not through like just opportunities, but even in the way like they're providing cheaper instruments to people in need or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, where it increases access, which
Mm-hmm.
was the key thing we were looking for in sponsors. And what ended up happening is that we had a bunch of sponsors wanting to come in. We had a bunch of artists wanting to come in, and that's mainly why we could make this entire festival free. simply because we had so much support and sponsors to make this thing a reality. And I honestly, what was funny to me was that initially I was a bit scared that having the festival free would sort of like undermine the festival in some way. But
Okay.
we actually got, I'm, I mean, we actually got artists wanting to do their part free. And we were thinking, you know what? It's up to the artists, it's up to the people who want to come. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, that's how we did it.
Well, it's very heartwarming that there's so many people in the low brass community that care so much about supporting each other.
hmm Yeah, I think the best thing that we ended up doing is creating sort of an interconnected web because there are always like people with as much like passion as us out there. It's just nobody has come through and basically come out of the blue and talk about, organizing.
Yeah.
Um, and that's basically all our job is to sort of organize, connect people together, give more opportunities.
Yeah, I really resonate with that mission. That's like, I think I may have forgotten to mention this, but the Sistema inspired programs, um, most of them are free to the students. Like what I was working for with Ravinia, it was free for the students. And it's all about providing access, just like you're doing. So yeah, I love that mission.
Yeah. If um if you mind me asking, what got you into like the trombone? Because I already know you're super specialized and know so much about the trombone, but what got you into it in the first place?
Well, I wanted to be in this in the band. I wanted to play music. And I thought I wanted to play the saxophone because my dad would listen to saxophone music and I really liked the sound. But the band director let me try out some instruments and I couldn't make a sound on the saxophone.
Mm,
And I was sounded pretty good on the trombone and I also just liked it. I think I kind of imagined myself like in the Music Man. I had seen that movie, 76 trombones and marching in a fancy outfit. And so I just picked it. And yeah, it's kind of amazing how like a decision that you make when you're 10 years old affects your whole life.
mm. Yeah, I sort of agree. I think how I ended up choosing the trombone. Initially, it was just because I wanted to try it out. It looked like a good sword, and I still have the urge to use it as a sword, but
As a sort.
you know, sorry, the sound is just really, really good. I think sometimes um most songs don't do this, but when they end up creating a song where the trombone has a part in the melody, it
Hmm.
just makes it so much like more powerful, as if it actually is like a sword, but this time it's a musical sword, not an actual sword.
Yeah, I love that. Like cutting through the ensemble, sword like.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you a bass trombonist? I think that I heard that on a different podcast.
Oh yeah, definitely. I am a bass trombonist. Actually, the bass trombone that I play is really like rare, and I joke about it being like some antique trombone from the 80s or something. But it's called I think Bench 290, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, it was a huge bell.
I've
Um,
heard of I've heard of Benj.
yeah, they're initially creating like I think they're known for creating trumpets, but they ended up also creating some bass trombone, and only a few went into circulation or something.
So how did you end up getting that particular trombone?
Um, I just got it used through like a place that really made it accessible to me, and yeah, that's how I ended up with it, and I'm glad
Nice.
I got it. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it is like extremely hard to play it in a marching band. just because of how heavy it is. And then I've got
Yeah.
some people asking me like, how do you carry that thing around like with one hand? I'm just like, I don't know myself.
It's all
But
the love of the trombone.
yeah, no, and I want to emphasize the bass part of the trombone, just the low notes of it.
Yeah,
Because
that's fun.
yeah, you can have a high pitched sword, but you can also have like a really like um strong sword.
Yeah, I got to play the bass trombone for a holiday orchestra concert in December, and that was quite fun.
Yeah. Anyways, is that all?
Yeah, that can be all.
All right. Thank you again for coming to our podcast and sort of talking with me about low brass and your experience with music. And I hope to see you later in the Low Brass Festival.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. That's all. Bye.
All right. Bye.